Exodus 1. These are the names of the sons of Israel who went to Egypt with Jacob, each with his family: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah; Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin; Dan and Naphtali; Gad and Asher. The descendants of Jacob numbered 17 all. Joseph was already in Egypt. Now Joseph and all his brothers and all that generation died, but the Israelites were exceedingly fruitful. They multiplied greatly, increased in numbers, and became so numerous that the land was filled with them. Then a new king, to whom Joseph meant nothing, came to power in Egypt. "Look," he said to his people, "the Israelites have become far too numerous for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly with them, or they will become even more numerous, and if war breaks out, will join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the country." So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor, and they built Pithom and Ramses as store cities for Pharaoh. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites and worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter with harsh labor in brick and mortar, and with all kinds of work in the fields. In all their harsh labor, the Egyptians worked them ruthlessly. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, whose names were Sifra and Puah, "When you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see that the baby is a boy, kill him, but if it is a girl, let her live." The midwives, however, feared God and did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live. Then the king of Egypt summoned the midwives and asked them, "Why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live?" The midwives answered Pharaoh, "Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwives arrive." So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own. Then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people: "Every Hebrew boy that is born you must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live."
Okay, that's the reverse of what some countries do, eh? Keep the boys and throw in the girls. Okay, any questions on the passage you just read? Any words you don't understand and I can explain to you? Or any sentences that you didn't understand?
What does it mean, midwives?
Midwives, okay? What's the verse? 20, for example. So God was kind to the midwives. Does anybody know who's a midwife? Okay, the usually they're not doctors or nurses. They're kind of nurses. They deliver the babies. Okay, so the midwife is a person, a health professional, healthcare professional who helps the ladies to deliver the babies. Okay, that's a midwife. Okay, so plural will be midwives. So the singular is midwife.
What's that?
Okay, and the plural is wives. Midwives. Okay. Any other words? Other words? Other words? Anyone? Any other words?
Still talking about the midwives.
Oh, okay. By the way, when we read the Old Testament, there are lots of words like names that you don't understand, and it's perfectly alright. I tell everybody who comes, because these are names of a language you don't understand anyway. So it doesn't matter how you pronounce it, okay? So when we have verse 11, they built Pithom and Ramesses. These are two cities that were in Egypt. The names of two cities. So Pithom and Ramesses are no longer around, but the I'll show you a map afterwards. The Bible scholars think they know which names are now the new names of these two cities. We have a lot of Jewish names here, right? Verse 2, verse 1, you've got Jacob, and then you've got Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. These were the 12 sons. Reuben is the oldest son of Jacob. So these are the 12 sons. You don't count 12 there because Joseph is not there. Verse 6 says Joseph and his brothers were already in Egypt. I'll talk about that later on. So these are all the names. And then we have in verse 15, you've got two other Hebrew names, Shiphrah and Puah. Okay, so all these are very Hebrew names. Shiphrah and Puah are the two midwives. Shiphrah means something like dawn, and Puah means fragrant. So yeah, it's very nice names for ladies. Yeah.
Oh, could I ask one
Yes.
question? It's a grammar question.
Grammar.
question. The verse 15. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives.
Yes.
Hebrew is a kind of language, right?
Yes. Hebrew is a language. In this context here,
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
in this context here, Hebrew is an adjective to describe a group of people. You see, there are many ways to refer to them. Today we call them Jews. In this passage here, there are two ways to refer to them: Israelites, people of Israel, right? So the Israelites in verse 12, for example, talks about Israelites. And then another way of referring to them is by their language. The language is Hebrew. The people of Israel today still speak Hebrew. So sometimes English is a funny language too, in that way that sometimes you refer to the people by their language.
Okay.
So Chinese, for example, is both the nationality and the language, the name of the language. So I'm a Chinese, I speak Chinese. So, but in this case, the Jews speak Hebrew, and the writer is trying to make I'll explain the difference later on, but he's trying to refer to the same group of people in a different way. First he calls them Israelites, and then he calls them Hebrews, using their language to refer to them as a group of people.
Okay.
So Hebrew is a language, you are right, but here in this case it's an adjective to refer to this.
Hebrew speaker. I mean the midwives of Hebrew
They
speakers.
were Hebrew speakers, yes, that's right. So these Hebrew midwives, they were midwives who were Hebrew speakers. That means they were the Jews. Yeah, in other words, they are Jews.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Brick and mortar. Does everybody know what's brick and mortar? Sometimes in a context, you do not know one word, but you know the other word, you can guess. So brick and mortar. What's brick and mortar? You know brick, right? Brick is those little, yeah. Yeah. This is a brick. Okay, so brick.
I can say something like this.
So brick and mortar, it goes together all the time. So what's the mortar then?
The one between.
Yeah, this thing in between that joins them together. So brick and mortar. Okay? So brick and mortar, they have to go together. You need to join the bricks together. Those are real bricks, yes. Okay, so nowadays they have plastic bricks, yeah? Yeah, that's real. I know wallpaper that look like bricks. Yeah. Those are real bricks. Real bricks and real mortar. Verse 18, how about the word summon? Do you know what's the meaning of summon?
Call.
To call, yes. And sometimes we talk about police summons. When you're speeding, do you talk about summons in Canada? Mm-hmm. Okay. So you got police, you go speeding and the police issue a ticket. Most of the time you say ticket, but actually the official name for that ticket is a summon. It summons you where? To court. Nikki knows it. It summons you to court. It's a call, and it's a call you cannot refuse. Okay, that's a summon. When someone, in John, the teacher, the science teacher, summons you, you better go. So it's a summon. Okay, so the king summoned the midwives. They have to go when he summons. When the king summons, you go. The first 5 books of the Bible begins with Genesis. Genesis has become an English word for beginning because it's the first book of the Bible, Genesis. It comes from the Greek word. 2 years ago we did the book of Genesis, and it has the meaning of beginning, origin. The second book is Exodus. Exodus is a Latin word, and it comes from the Greek word exodos. You go to Greece today and you go out, you go into a movie and you want to come out, you know where to go, you look for exodos.
Exit, right?
Exit. Okay, so exodos means leaving, getting out. And so the book of Exodus is about the Jews leaving Egypt. Okay, Exodus. And then, anybody knows what's the next book? Numbers? Leviticus?
Leviticus.
Okay. Leviticus, there's the word Levi there. Levi is, yeah, genes. One of the sons of Jacob, right? Levi. Read Reuben, Simeon, Levi, verse 2. Okay, and the guy who made the jeans famous, his name was Levi Strauss. He was a Jew. So his name, that's a Jewish name, Levi. So Leviticus, the Levites, the people from the family of Levi were priests. So Leviticus is a book of instructions for the priests. Okay, what's the next book? Numbers. So it begins, the beginning of the heavens and the earth, the beginning of the Jewish family that was founded by Abraham and Jacob. And then they were in Egypt for many years. And then they were oppressed, they were tortured, they were persecuted, so they left. So they left Egypt, they exit Egypt. And when they were a country, a nation all by themselves, they needed to be holy people. God wanted them to be holy and gave them instructions on how to be holy and how they would have priests to help them to be holy. And as with all generals, Moses was a general, he was a political leader too, and a religious leader. He needed to know how many people he had. So he needs to count. Today, Canada, the Canadian government still needs to know how many they have. And they count also, right? Oh yeah, they do count. Every 10 years. They come to your home and knock and ask you to fill in a form. It's called the census. Every 10 years. Census. Okay? So, the book of Numbers is about the Jews wandering around in the desert, and every now and then they need to know how many they are. So Moses will count them. Numbers. And then the last book is Deuteronomy. Nomos is a Greek word. These are all Greek names, actually, except for this one. This is English. Nomos is law. Deutero is second. So science teacher will know they have a lot of use of Greek names and Greek symbols and so on. So Deutero, second law. Why? Because we will read in Exodus chapter 20, Moses will give the law of God to the people of Israel. And then he lives to be 120 years old, and then he's about to die. But before he dies, like all good teachers, before they pass on, they make sure you have learned the lesson. They may not die, but you may graduate, and before you graduate, they give you one last lesson. Or before the end of the year, before your exams, your teachers will give you the lesson again, summarized. So Deuteronomy is the law given a second time by Moses. First time it was given here, second time it was given here, then he dies. Okay, so these are the 5 books, and there is, to the Jews, they have a name for all 5 books, the collection of the 5 books. Does anybody know what the Jews call this collection of 5 books?
The Torah.
the Torah. Torah. Okay? Torah actually in Hebrew means instruction. Also law. So they call this the laws of Moses. So Jesus in the New Testament, when he talked about the laws of Moses, he means all these 5 books, the Torah. Okay, so the Jews call it the Torah. The English translation is the law of Moses, and there is, for the scholars, there's another name for it. It's again from the Greek. It's the Pentateuch. So you don't need to remember this. Only Pastor Bunyang needs to remember this. Okay, Penta is how many? 5. Yeah, Penta, 5 volumes. Pentateuch. It's the Pentateuch. The Pentateuch is the laws of Moses. It's the Torah. It's this first 5 books. Okay, so a little bit of technical knowledge. Now the other thing you need to know about this book is the scholars will argue who wrote it and how they wrote it and so on. But most what we call evangelical scholars, traditional scholars of the Bible, the Christian faith, they mostly agree that Moses wrote these 5 books. Okay, when we say that Moses wrote these 5 books, doesn't mean that he wrote every single word that we see today. There would have been an oral tradition in many countries in the world today. They tell stories by word of mouth. Okay, father passed on to son, son to grandson, and so on. So the story gets passed on orally. And then somewhere along the line, it was written down. And it probably was written by Moses because in many, we'll see them, in many passages, God says to Moses, write this down. And Moses says, I wrote it down. And things like that. So we know that Moses himself said he wrote it down. But of course, Moses will not be able to write about his death towards the end. So somebody else would have picked up the book that Moses wrote and added in, and Moses died. So no problem with that. We can have also an editor many years later who sits down and maybe does some corrections, spelling errors, whatever. So he may also add in some things. So, but generally speaking, it was written by Moses, and I will point out to you those places where, and you can read out for yourself, where Moses says, I wrote this, or this is God's instruction for me to write this down. Most important for us who are Christians, we believe that these books were written by Moses because Jesus said so. Okay? In Mark, for example, in Mark chapter 12, verse 26, Jesus himself says that this was written by Moses. Mark chapter 12, 26, and he says, you read in the law of Moses, right? In Mark chapter 7, verse 10, Jesus also refers to Exodus, and he refers to it as the law of Moses. Okay? Okay, so yeah, Mark chapter 7, verse 10. Bill, read it to us.
For Moses said, honor your father and your mother, and anyone who curses his father or mother must be put to death.
Okay, so Jesus says, and Moses said, honor your father and mother. That comes from Exodus chapter 20. All right? And when in Mark chapter 12, verse 26, what did he say? Bill?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we're very fast. Mark chapter 12, verse 26. Whoever has got it first, you can read up to us. Mark 12, 26. Is Jesus speaking? What did he say?
Now about the dead arisen, have you not read in book of Moses, in the account of the bush, how God said to him, I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.
Okay, so Jesus is quoting from the law of Moses, the book of Moses, right? And he says the burning bush is Exodus chapter 3. Now, the chapter numbers of the Bible, the verse numbers and all that were written were written into the Bible about the 15th century, many years after the Bible was originally written. So Jesus will not have the chapter numbers and the verse numbers. So he will refer, in the passage on Moses where he is talking to the burning bush, we know it's chapter 3. We read chapter 3. Exodus chapter 3, Moses saw this bush burning and it was not burning. It was not burning up. So he went closer to look. He was curious. How can a fire be burning the bush and it's not burning up? It's not turning black. So he walked nearer and a voice spoke to him, the voice of God. So Jesus said, remember that passage on the burning bush? Okay, because he didn't have a way to refer to it that we can today. Chapter number 3, verse number 14. He couldn't do that. Okay, that is a later addition about the 15th century. So when Jesus was talking about Exodus 3, he says, that's the book of Moses. Moses wrote it. Okay? So we are very confident as Christians that because Jesus recognized it, and Jesus is God himself, he recognized it as being written primarily by Moses. And there are many other chapters in the Old Testament, like in Kings and Chronicles and all that, they will refer back to the laws of Moses. And as I said, in Exodus itself, like for example, Exodus 15 there will be a song, and the writer calls it the Song of Moses, a song of Miriam and Moses. And then in chapter 17 and 24 and 34, okay, these are the many places where in the book of Exodus itself, we are told Moses wrote it.